Because we started a bit late, I don't have that much time, so I'm going to whiz through this presentation. So as you know, I started Hedera Hashgraph, the top 30 cryptocurrency. Its market value is at about 5 billion. And then the Reserve Protocol, which is the app in Venezuela, and its market cap is about 300 million. And then Nillion, we just raised 24 million. Before this, though, and to give you context for my talk, I started a digital marketing agency, which I sold, and a pet health company, which is currently the fastest growing pet health company in the United States. Unlike Web3 or crypto or tech, the pet company did not raise any money. It's got hundreds of millions of dollars in revenue and is deeply profitable. So the intersection of Web 2 and Web 3, because of the experience of this intersection, the teams asked me to speak for 10, 15 minutes about how I broadly got into Web 3 entrepreneurship, and broader advice on starting Web 3 protocols. I'd love to go technical, but I think we have a PhD from Nillion, Andre here, who's going to do that, and Andrew. So firstly, it's a privilege to be speaking at Harvard. Thank you for having me. A bit about my background. I started off with very humble beginnings. Was born in poverty-stricken Indonesia, grew up as a first-generation migrant in Australia, studied 2 degrees at the University of Sydney, and then upon graduating, became a lawyer, which I hated, and thus got me into starting companies. So as I speak to you, the students of Harvard, it occurs to me that you are at the sort of same place that I was, where I couldn't possibly imagine that the things that I would have started could be worth billions of dollars. And I'm here to hopefully give you a couple of lessons here and there about how to make that process easier for you, but also how to give you the greatest chance of making the world a better place through creating these entities. So let's start with something a little bit more informal and juicy. Could you go to the next? Firstly, and I know we have the Ritual founder here, and there could be several other founders, being a sole Web3 founder can really suck, and I'll tell you why. Being a co-founder is less sucky. Being employee 1, 2, or 3 is so much better. So as you're looking at your career in crypto, if you're looking at it, consider this. The first thing is you have so much responsibility as a founder anyway. You know, all roads lead to Rome, all problems lead to you. And in Web 3, the problems are more complex than Web 2. It's because you're dealing with token economics, you're dealing with incentive design, you're dealing with the impact of crypto Twitter on the perception of your product, the uncertain regulatory environment around like decentralized protocols. And because of this, when things happen internally in your company, a lot of times it's reflected externally and you have to deal with this sort of shitstorm of public perception. On top of this, you obviously have to deal with the stuff that you're dealing with in regular Web 2 companies. Is my product going to be good? Fundraising, hiring, etc. Now, why does this suck? Because it may not be the straightest line to your objective as you get into Web 3. If your objective is to become known as a founder for ego purposes, or if you have a vision that no one else is going to support and you really need to see that vision go through, then sure, be a founder. But an interesting parable is my roommate back in the day, his name was Conrad. And Conrad made more impact, more money, and with less stress than almost any other Web3 founder I know, because he was the second employee at Uber, right? And I love that because he just didn't have the level of stress and had so much more of the impact and upside. So and this brings me to a counterexample where I have a friend, his name's David. You would never have heard of David because David has been a founder for 10 years and he's still trying to be a successful founder, hates his life, does not have the strategic decision-making capacity, but would have made a phenomenal COO or a chief of staff or first or second joiner. You know? Personally, I also don't like being the CEO. I prefer prefer a lot being a co-founder where I am in charge of a different state of affairs. I have been CEO before, and I'm telling you that it is very difficult, and there's a lot of stress that comes with it. So the final point I'll make is if you want to be a Web3 founder, you have to be obsessed with three things. The first is your technology. The second is the protocol that you're building and how it fits into the third thing, which is the crypto market. You have to be obsessed with the crypto market because the way that crypto Twitter, CT as we call it, interacts and interfaces with your protocol determines a lot of the time both the value, the business development, the hiring, and that snowball of perception can really snowball downwards, right? So that's my first piece of advice. I would love to go a little bit more deeply into this, but I unfortunately don't have the time. Just consider well the role you would play in the company that you work on and for. The second point is that beyond the idea, the most important thing to think about is a team and market. And the reason I say this now is because you're Harvard University students. You have the capability now to build relationships with other people within Harvard, but more importantly, it was so difficult for me in the beginning, when I started Hedera, for example, to get smart people to come alongside me. But because you can use Harvard cred, or hopefully your work experience cred as well, people will join you. And when you meet someone that you think is the counterbalance, let's say you're non-technical, is the technical counterbalance, or let's say you're more strategic, or you are more biz dev, then you need someone perhaps in marketing or ops. You want to keep an eye out for those people and then start companies with them, right? Keep them in your close network so that you know that you can reach out for them. Because it's easy to transition from it's not easy, but it's easier to transition from a bad idea, to pivot from a bad idea to a good idea rather than from a bad team, or bad co-founders is even worse, but a bad team to a good team. And I can say that now because the current team at Nilian is the founding engineer of Uber, the founder of Indiegogo, several founders of other protocols who don't want to be doxxed, but it is such an elite team and it just makes working there so much easier. I really hope you take that step, and I really hope you plan for that as you go through your lives and leverage the position that you have as Harvard students. As for the market, just a quick parable. In 2017, I decided to get into crypto. I bought Bitcoin in 2011, but I had several friends who went into other areas. One, for example, went into credit scoring, I think it was, and the comparison of where we are now relatively is completely unbelievable. And we are equivalently as talented, I know that for sure. But a rising tide lifts all boats. And because I was in crypto, because I caught Hedera and Reserve and now Nilian at the right times, and when I say right times, it's just obvious that it was the right time in crypto. It jettisoned me to a level of billions of dollars of market cap and value relative to smaller wins, let's say. And so that brings me to my third point, which is truly exponential opportunities. The way to find, I think, truly exponential opportunities is to search for things that could be true, or that you think are true, that you have a feeling or a sensation that is true, and then literally obsess over every little detail of that to see if you think it could be true. I'll give you an example. So in 2017, I was surfing AngelList, and I was literally surfing and I read distributed consensus mechanism. And I was like, well, I wonder what that is. So I clicked on it. There was this inventor who had invented this is literally from surfing AngelList, but there was an inventor who invented something called the hash graph. But at that stage, it wasn't a Web3 protocol. It was just a way for computers to all agree on a certain set of facts. That being said, I had been somewhat interested and was becoming more and more obsessed with blockchain and with distributed consensus mechanisms. And so I took that idea, I went to Silicon Valley, I've presented it to Founders Fund, I presented it to Ribbit Capital, I think I presented it to Andreessen as well. I don't remember because I presented to so many people and they all said, no way. Some said you're downright dumb, right? But the difference is I had the obsession about both the market, the technology, and the protocol, and I knew that there was something there. I knew that there was something. I knew it could be big because I was excited about it, right? And so I was just like, fuck it, I'll put in the first $500,000 myself and I'll found this company with the inventor and his best friend, right? And 8 months later, we raised $100 million at a $6 billion valuation. The funny thing is, the guy from Founders Fund who interviewed us lost his job, and then I met him a while later, and he said, "That's probably why I lost my job." So, what are the interesting spaces now? Look, the interesting spaces are going to depend on the things that you are genuinely interested in as people, right? The things I would look at, but these are obvious, and I hate saying obvious things because it's usually the non-obvious which are the greatest opportunities. But obviously, AI applications in terms of so for example, the disintermediation of studios now because of Sora and AI video, Vision Pro or other wearable platforms and the apps that are going to be developed on those platforms. I find new non-blockchain decentralized technology like Nillion. There are a couple of others coming out where you have decentralized protocols which can do so much more, which have a different set of features and functions, which you'll hear about when my co-founder comes in and talks. And then, one thing I really like, which is slightly contrarian, is NFTs. Why? Because everyone thinks they're dog shit now. And I don't. I think that they are amazing and that they have a great place in the world at some point in time and that they'll come right back. So now is the time to kind of look at the opportunities there. And if you have that level of obsession, then perhaps you'll find the crack in the matrix. My final point is, in crypto, remember that as a crypto founder, you have two products. The actual product, the actual protocol where developers build on, and the second is your token, right? Why? Because the perception of your token, as I said before, drives value, not just for the token, but for for business development, for marketing, for customer acquisition, et cetera, et cetera. So you have to keep in mind, too many times you get a Web 2 or a finance guy coming in and they don't recognize the importance of the crypto community and the feel and the pulse you need to have by way of crypto Twitter and by way of what the token is actually doing and the way the token is perceived. So in closing, I would encourage you, the students of Harvard, to look outside the box of becoming a management consultant or a banker or a lawyer like I was, or any other gray fucking suit, to be honest, even a founder, and to instead think about the undefined or the unique or the individualized, based on things that you feel deeply about, but you don't know why, or based on a future that you want to create. Don't follow what everyone else wants you to do. Instead, get involved in the weeds, and that's really important. In the weeds of whatever you think is kind of weird or wonderful or wonky, the fact that you're here learning about Web3 shows that you are those sorts of people. But where in your heart of hearts and in your obsessions, you have a sort of pull towards this thing, a passion that other people might not understand. Nay, they probably would doubt you and shame you like they did to me if you were to get involved in these sorts of things. And then here's what you do. You let them doubt you. You use your brilliance and your perseverance to make your thoughts a reality. And then when you win, you hire the fucking doubters. So with that, I will pass the floor to my co-founder, Andrew Yeo, who will talk more deeply on Nillion.